Translate and solve percent proportion. So we're going to take the key equation we've learned before and we're going to put it into a proportion and we're going to solve. And so this is what it looks like. So we have is, which is the part, over the of, which would be the whole, and then it's the percent over 100. So this is a proportion because we have two ratios equal to each other. And we can use this, right, in order to solve for an unknown. So let's go ahead and look at the first example. A hospital's NICU has the capacity for 45 babies. Currently, there are only 16 babies in the NICU. What percent of 45 is 16? We're just going to go ahead and write this real quick. So we are solving for, right, what percent? So that will be our unknown, right? Then, what percent of 45? Well, that would go right there, right on the bottom. And then we have is 16, so that goes on top. So let's go ahead and fill this in. So we have 16 over 45, which is equal to x, because that's our unknown, over 100. Then what we'll do is we just will cross multiply. So we can go ahead and multiply what's in, like, say, the red circle right here. So 45 times x is just like, right, 45 times x, so that's there. Then we have 16 times 100. Then to get x by itself, we just go ahead and divide by 45 on both sides, right, because that just becomes 1. So we're left with just x on the left-hand side. Then we can pull our calculators out and solve. And what do we get? We get 35.5, and it just continues on. So we'll just go 35.6. As we'll round to just the nearest tenth. And that would be our solution. So only the NICU is only at, right, like 35.6%. So let's go ahead and solve for the second example. Example 2, a hospital had 13 babies delivered in 1 week. Then 3 out of those 13 babies had to go to the NICU. 3 is what percent of 13? So let's go ahead. So we're still solving for what percent, so that's going to be our unknown. That will be our x eventually. Then we have 3 is, so that's going to go right on top, right? So what percent of 13 is 3, is what we're saying. We just kind of rewrote it differently. Then we have of 13, so that would just go right there. So let's fill all of this in. So we have 3 over 13, which is equal to x, right, our unknown. And then we have 100. Then we would go ahead, do the same thing, we would cross multiply, right? Rather than just saying, if we just multiplied 13 on both sides, right, this is how this works out. We could go ahead and multiply 13 on both sides, right? This gets rid of it here. Then we'd also, right, we have 13x, then over 100. Then we do a 100 on both sides. That gets rid of it there. So now we have 300, which is equal to 13x. So, right, this is a lot of steps, but if we just did this kind of butterfly kind of thing and just multiplied across, you can see we'll get there. So we have 13 times x, so 13x. Then we have 3 times 100. So as you see, we got back to this, right? Because 3 times 100 is just 300. And then our way to solve for just x by itself is to divide by 13 on both sides. We'll pull out the calculator. So we have 3 times 100 divided by 13, and we get 23.1%. And so, realize you could solve for this way, right? You could solve like this butterfly kind of way and cross multiply, or you can go ahead and use this too. Either way, whatever you feel most confident about. Example 3. A hospital had 16 babies delivered in 1 week. Then 25% of those babies had to go to the NICU. So what is 25% of 16? So we can go ahead and solve. So notice we're given actually the percentage, right? So we don't need to solve for that this time. Then we're given of 16. So we're given the whole amount, and then we're looking for the part, right? Which would be the is. So what is? So how many babies went to the NICU? Well, it's only a fraction of the 16, right? So not 16, it's a much smaller number. So let's go ahead and look. So we have is, which can be x, over of, which is 16, the percent, which is 25, over 100. We're going to do the same thing, right? And go ahead and cross multiply. So we have 100 times x, and then we have 16 times 25. Then we can go ahead and just say multiply this part out first. And we get 400. Then we can go ahead and divide by 100 on both sides to get x all by itself. 400 divided by 100, well, that's just 4. And if you aren't sure, just go ahead and use the calculator, and there you can see it really quick, or you can go ahead and do the division. Now, so x is equal to then 4. So 4 babies were sent to the NICU, and that would be our solution. And so something it's always good to double check is like, does that make sense? And it does, right? Like, so 25% is about 1/4. So 1/4 of 16, yeah, it looks about like to be 4, right? If you want to make sure your answers feel logical, right? If you got a larger number, that should send out an alarm, right? Because only 25% of 16 babies had to go to the NICU. So you know it has to be less than 16. So just these kind of things kind of help set up you to kind of make sure you're doing the right answer if you're asking yourself those questions.